What's that smell? Oh, it's coming from her. Guess they'll let anybody into first class these days.
The whole cabin heard it. A white flight attendant wrinkling her nose 3 feet from a black woman like she'd stepped in something rotten.
I paid for this seat.
The attendant leaned in close enough for Simone to feel her breath.
Get your greasy black ass to the back of the plane.
I'm not going anywhere.
The flight attendant raised her hand and slapped Simone Sterling across the face in front of everyone. Simone's head snapped sideways, her cheek burned red. The whole cabin watched a black woman get slapped in her seat, and nobody opened their mouth. But that flight attendant just made the worst mistake of her entire career. And she doesn't even know it yet. Let me take you back. 3 hours before that slap, before the plane, before any of it. 5:15 in the morning, Alexandria, Virginia. A quiet townhouse on a tree-lined street where the only sound was a coffee machine hissing in the kitchen. Simone Sterling stood at the counter in bare feet. No makeup, hair wrapped in a silk scarf. She poured her coffee black, no sugar, no cream, and carried it to the dining table where a tablet glowed next to a stack of folders. She sat down and started reading. Route performance reports, fuel cost projections, customer satisfaction surveys broken down by cabin class, by region, by quarter. She circled numbers with a stylus, made notes in the margins, flagged 3 pages with red tabs. This wasn't casual reading, this was preparation. On the shelf behind her, 2 framed photos told the whole story. The first one showed a young black woman in a Crestline Airways uniform. Navy blue, name tag pinned crooked, smile wide enough to light up an entire terminal. 22 years old, gate agent, entry level. That was Simone, fresh out of college, scanning boarding passes at Washington Dulles for $11 an hour. The second photo was taken 18 years later. Same woman, same airline, different universe. Simone in a charcoal suit, shaking hands with the outgoing CEO, Richard Ellison, at a company leadership summit. The plaque behind them read, Crestline Airways, connecting America since 1962. Between those 2 photos sat a sealed envelope, cream-colored, heavy paper, stamped with the Crestline corporate logo. The words across the front read, Confidential, Board of Directors, Crestline Airways. Inside that envelope was a letter confirming what only a handful of people in the world knew. Simone Sterling had been appointed the new Chief Executive Officer of Crestline Airways, effective Monday, which was today. Her phone buzzed. She picked up without looking. You nervous? Her mother's voice, warm, a little scratchy from sleep. Simone smiled. Mama, I've been nervous for 20 years. Today I'm just ready. You eat something? Coffee counts. Coffee does not count, Simone Elaine Sterling. She laughed. I'll grab something at the airport, I promise. Mm-hmm. That's what you said last time, and you called me at midnight talking about some airport pretzel. It was a good pretzel. Her mother paused, then, softer. Your daddy would be so proud of you, baby. You know that, right? Simone went quiet. She looked at the photos on the shelf, then at the envelope, then at her own reflection in the dark window. A black woman sitting alone in her kitchen at 5 in the morning, about to run a billion-dollar airline. I know, Mama, I know. She hung up and finished her coffee. Then she did something that would change everything about this story. She opened the Crestline Airways app on her phone, pulled up Flight 312, Washington Dulles to Chicago O'Hare, departing 6:45 a.m. She booked a first-class ticket, Seat 2A, under her own name. No corporate flags, no VIP alerts, no executive lounge access, just a regular booking. Because today wasn't about the title. Today was about the truth. Simone wanted to know, really know, how her airline treated a black woman traveling alone in first class. No handlers, no special treatment, no one whispering, "That's the new CEO," into their earpiece. Just Simone, just a passenger, just a test. She dressed simply, black blazer, gray slacks, small gold earrings her father gave her for her college graduation. No designer logos, no power suit, nothing that screamed money or authority. She wanted to be invisible. She wanted to see what happens when nobody's watching. She grabbed her leather carry-on, locked the front door, and stepped into the cool Virginia morning. The sky was still dark. The streetlights hummed amber. Her heels clicked against the brick walkway, steady, measured, the walk of a woman who had spent 2 decades earning every single step. Now let's talk about that plane. Crestline Airways Flight 312. A wide-body aircraft parked at Gate C-14, Washington Dulles International. The kind of plane that holds 260 passengers and smells like recycled air and stale pretzels before the doors even close. First class was a small cabin up front. 8 seats, leather, warm lighting, the kind of space where they hang your coat and call you sir before you even sit down, if you look the part. The crew had already boarded, and the woman running first class that morning was Brenda Caldwell. Brenda was 44, 15 years with Crestline, senior flight attendant. She had a reputation among the crew, not for excellence, but for territory. First class was her cabin, her passengers, her space, and she decided who belonged there. What the company didn't talk about, what HR had quietly filed and even more quietly buried, was that Brenda had 2 prior complaints from passengers of color. Both times the passengers said Brenda treated them differently, colder, slower, meaner. Both times a sympathetic supervisor reviewed the case and marked it unsubstantiated. Both times Brenda walked away clean. Today she was about to push her luck one last time. The boarding door opened at 6:15 a.m. Passengers filed in. Business travelers with rolling bags. A young couple heading to Chicago for a wedding. A white-haired man in a cashmere coat who nodded at Brenda like they were old friends. Brenda smiled at him, took his coat, offered a pre-departure champagne. "Welcome aboard, sir. Let me know if you need anything at all." Then Simone Sterling walked through the door, and everything changed. Brenda's smile disappeared. Her posture shifted. She looked Simone up and down, not quickly, not subtly, the way a store clerk watches someone they think might shoplift. She didn't say welcome. She didn't offer to take her bag. She didn't smile. She just stood there, blocking the aisle, arms folded. And 2 rows back, a woman named Olivia Dawson, 31, white, traveling alone, quietly reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. She didn't know why yet, just a feeling. Something about the way that flight attendant's face changed the moment a black woman stepped on board. Olivia turned the camera on, hit record, and kept it low. Now here's what you need to understand. What happened on that plane didn't start with the slap. The slap was the explosion. But the fuse was lit the second Simone Sterling stepped into first class and Brenda Caldwell decided she didn't belong there. Let me walk you through it. Piece by piece. Simone made her way down the aisle, carry-on in one hand, boarding pass in the other. Row 1, row 2. She stopped at 2A, her seat, window side. She reached up to open the overhead bin. "Excuse me." Brenda's voice came from behind her, sharp, the kind of tone you use on a child reaching for something they shouldn't touch. Simone turned. "Yes? I need to see your boarding pass." Simone held it up. "Seat 2A, right here." Brenda snatched it, held it up to the overhead light like she was checking a watermark on a counterfeit bill. Looked at the name. Looked at Simone. Looked at the name again. "Where did you get this?" "I bought it. Through the app. These seats are usually reserved for Platinum loyalty members. I am Platinum tier, have been for 6 years." Brenda didn't check. Didn't scan the pass. Didn't pull up the system. She just stood there holding Simone's boarding pass like evidence in a criminal investigation. "I'm going to need to verify this. Step aside to the galley, please." A paying first-class passenger, Platinum loyalty member, being told to go stand in the galley, the little kitchen area where they heat up meals and store trash bags, while her seat assignment was verified. Simone looked around the cabin. The white-haired man in 1B was already sipping champagne. The couple in 1C had blankets. The woman in 2B had her eye mask ready. Every single one of them boarded without a word. No one asked for their passes. No one asked them to step aside. But Simone, the only black passenger in the cabin, was being marched to the galley like a suspect. She went. Not because she believed it was right, but because she wanted to see how far this would go. That was the whole point of today. She stood in the galley for 4 minutes. 4 minutes doesn't sound like a lot. But stand in a cramped kitchen on an airplane while passengers file past you, wondering what you did wrong, and 4 minutes feels like 4 hours. A child walked by and pointed. "Why is that lady standing there, Mommy?" The mother shushed him and kept walking. Finally, Brenda came back. She handed the boarding pass to Simone the way you'd hand a parking ticket to someone who annoyed you. "It seems to check out." No apology, no smile, just, "It seems to check out." Simone took her boarding pass and walked back to 2A. She sat down, placed her carry-on overhead herself, because Brenda sure as hell wasn't going to help. She buckled her seatbelt, folded her hands, and waited. Now, what happened next was the kind of thing you might miss if you weren't paying attention. But Simone was paying attention. Pre-departure beverage service. Before the plane even leaves the gate, the flight attendant comes around with a tray. Champagne, orange juice, water. It's a small gesture, but it sets the tone. It says, "We see you. We're taking care of you." Brenda started at row 1. The white-haired man got champagne with a linen napkin. The couple got orange juice with a warm smile. The woman in 2B got sparkling water and a, "Let me know if you need anything, hun." Then Brenda reached Simone's row and kept walking. Walked right past her, like the seat was empty, like Simone was invisible. Simone watched Brenda serve every passenger behind her. Everyone got a drink, a napkin, a smile. Everyone except Simone. She pressed the call button. Brenda took 90 seconds, then appeared with an expression that said, "This better be important." "Yes? I'd love a water, please." Brenda came back with a cup, a small, clear, flimsy plastic cup, the kind they use in economy. Every other first-class passenger had crystal glassware etched with the Crestline logo. Simone got a plastic cup that wouldn't survive a toddler's birthday party. She looked at the cup. She looked at the crystal glass on 2B's tray. She didn't say a word. She just picked it up and took a sip. Across the aisle, Olivia Dawson saw it. The crystal, the plastic, the difference. Her phone was still recording. The plane took off. The seatbelt sign dinged off, and the meal service began. This is where it got worse. Brenda worked through first class with meal trays. She served every row, except Simone. Again. 10 minutes passed. 15. Finally, Brenda appeared with a tray. She didn't ask what Simone wanted. She set it down hard, careless the way you drop a bag of groceries. The plate slid. A cup of hot coffee tipped and spilled across Simone's right sleeve. The coffee was scalding. Simone pulled her arm back. The dark liquid soaked through her blazer, through her blouse, onto her skin. Sharp heat first, then a low, throbbing burn. That coffee was extremely hot. "Could I get some napkins?" Brenda looked at the spill the way you'd look at a puddle on a sidewalk. "Maybe if you'd moved when I set it down, that wouldn't have happened." "I was sitting perfectly still." Sure you were." Simone reached for her phone. She wanted to document the spill, the burn, the stain, evidence. And that's when Brenda's hand came down, fast, hard. She slapped the phone right out of Simone's fingers. It cracked against the armrest and clattered to the floor. Dead silence. Not quiet, silent. The kind of silence that has weight. Brenda straightened up. She didn't look shocked, she looked righteous. "Do not record crew members on this aircraft. That is a federal violation." "It's not. There is no such law." Brenda made it up, but she said it with such authority that half the cabin believed her. Simone bent down, picked up her cracked phone, placed it on her tray. Her hands were steady. Her expression was stone. But if you looked closely, and Olivia did because her camera was still running, you could see Simone's jaw tighten, her neck flex. Her eyes go glassy for just a moment before she blinked it away. This wasn't just a CEO being mistreated. This was a black woman reliving something she'd felt before. At 22, when a passenger told her she didn't look like she should be working here. At 28, when a manager passed her over for a white colleague with half her experience. At 35, when a board member asked if she was the diversity hire. Every time she'd stayed calm, swallowed it whole. But sitting in seat 2A with coffee burning through her sleeve and a cracked phone on her tray, Simone Sterling made a decision. She wasn't going to swallow it. Not today. Not ever again. She looked Brenda dead in the eye. "I want your name and your employee ID right now." Brenda crossed her arms. "You don't need my name. Sit down and enjoy your flight." She turned and walked away. Like it was over. Like she'd won. She hadn't even started losing yet. Brenda Caldwell walked back to the galley with the posture of a woman who believed she was untouchable. 15 years. Not one write-up that stuck. Not one complaint that went anywhere. She'd learned the system. She knew which supervisors would back her up. She knew which words to use in reports. Unruly, aggressive, non-compliant. Words that changed shape depending on the color of the person they described. She picked up the intercom phone and pressed the button for the cockpit. "Captain, this is Brenda in first class. I have a situation up here." Captain James Whitfield was running through his pre-cruise checklist when the call came in. 25 years in the air, gray at the temples. The kind of pilot who spoke slowly because he'd seen enough to know that rushing made everything worse. "Go ahead, Brenda. What's the situation?" "I've got a passenger in 2A. She's been disruptive since boarding, arguing with crew. She tried to record me without authorization. I had to intervene physically to stop her. I think she may be intoxicated. I'm requesting you come to the cabin." Every word of that was a lie. But Brenda said it the way she said everything. Calm, professional, by the book. The kind of voice that sounds reasonable even when it's saying something monstrous. Captain Whitfield unbuckled his harness. "I'll be right there." He stepped out of the cockpit and into first class. The cabin was tense. You could feel it. That thick, electric silence that fills a room when everyone knows something bad happened, but nobody wants to be the first to say it. Whitfield looked around. He saw the white-haired man in 1B staring out the window, the couple in 1C pretending to watch the in-flight movie, the woman in 2B gripping her armrest like she was trying to hold herself in her seat. Then he saw Simone, sitting in 2A, coffee stain on her blazer, cracked phone on her tray, posture straight, face composed. Not the posture of a drunk, not the posture of someone causing trouble, the posture of someone holding themselves together with everything they had. He approached her the way he approached everything. Measured. "Ma'am, I'm Captain Whitfield. I've been told there's been a disturbance. Can you tell me what happened?" Simone looked up at him. She didn't rush, didn't raise her voice. She laid it out like a case file. "When I boarded, your flight attendant questioned my right to sit in first class. She made me stand in the galley for 4 minutes while she verified my booking, a step she didn't take with any other passenger. She skipped me during the beverage service. When she finally brought me a drink, it was in a plastic economy cup while everyone else received glassware. During the meal service, she placed my tray carelessly, which caused hot coffee to spill on my arm. When I reached for my phone to document the incident, she slapped it out of my hand. She then told me it was a federal violation to record crew members, which is false." She paused. "I have not raised my voice once. I have not left my seat. I have not consumed any alcohol. I was never offered any. I would like her name and employee ID, and I would like this interaction formally documented." Captain Whitfield listened without interrupting. He looked at the coffee stain. He looked at the cracked phone. He looked at the plastic cup sitting next to 2B's crystal glass. Then he turned to Brenda. "Ms. Caldwell?" Brenda was ready. She'd rehearsed this part before. Maybe not out loud, but in her head, the way people do when they've gotten away with things so many times they start to believe their own version. "Captain, this passenger has been hostile since the moment she boarded. She was argumentative during the boarding pass check. She demanded special treatment during beverage service. When the coffee spilled, which was an accident, she became verbally aggressive and started recording me without permission. I had to stop her for the safety of the crew." "You hit her phone out of her hand?" I redirected her device. For safety." Captain Whitfield paused on that. Redirected. That was a new one. He turned back to the cabin. Did anyone else witness what happened here? Silence. The businessman in 1B suddenly found something fascinating about the cloud formations outside his window. The couple in 1C exchanged a glance that said, "Please don't make us get involved." Then a voice came from across the aisle. "I saw everything." Olivia Dawson, seat 2C, phone still in her hand. "I've been on this flight since boarding. I watched this flight attendant single this woman out from the moment she stepped on the plane. She questioned her boarding pass. She made her stand in the galley. She skipped her for drinks. She served her coffee in a plastic cup. And then she slapped her phone out of her hand. I have video of the incident on my phone." Brenda's face changed. For the first time since Simone boarded, something cracked behind her eyes. Not guilt, fear. She's exaggerating. That's not what... "I have it on video, ma'am." Captain Whitfield raised a hand. "Okay, let's everybody take a breath." But Brenda wasn't breathing. She was calculating, and she made the decision that desperate people always make. She doubled down. She grabbed the intercom again. This time she called the gate. "This is Senior Flight Attendant Brenda Caldwell on Flight 312. I need airport security to meet the aircraft at the gate immediately. I have a passenger in first class who is verbally abusive, possibly intoxicated, and has become physically threatening toward the crew. Requesting immediate escort and removal." She hung up, looked at Simone, and smiled. We'll see who believes who. 8 minutes later, the cockpit door opened again. This time it wasn't the captain. 2 airport police officers stepped into first class, both in uniform, both serious. One had a hand resting near his belt. The cabin temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Every passenger turned. Every eye locked on the officers as they walked down the aisle, toward Simone. "Ma'am, we've received a report of disruptive behavior. Can I see some identification, please?" Simone reached into her bag. Slowly, deliberately. The way black people in America learn to move when there are uniforms in the room. No sudden gestures, hands visible, nothing that could be misinterpreted. She handed over her driver's license. The officer looked at it, looked at her. "Ma'am, we may need to escort you off this aircraft." "On what grounds?" "We've received reports that you've been verbally abusive and physically threatening toward a crew member." "That is not what happened. There are multiple witnesses. One of them has video. I've been in my seat the entire flight. I haven't raised my voice. I haven't threatened anyone." The officer glanced at his partner. This wasn't adding up. The woman in front of them was calm, articulate, and sitting quietly in her seat with a coffee stain on her blazer and a cracked phone on her tray. She didn't look abusive. She didn't look intoxicated. She looked like someone who'd been having a very bad morning. But Brenda was standing behind them, arms crossed, nodding like a prosecutor who'd already won the case. "Officers, I've been doing this for 15 years. I know a problem passenger when I see one." And then, the lowest point. One of the officers turned back to Simone. "Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to gather your belongings and come with us." The cabin held its breath. Simone looked around, at the passengers who wouldn't meet her eyes, at the officers in the aisle, at Brenda, standing behind them, chin lifted, smug. A child in the row behind first class, couldn't have been more than 5 or 6, tugged on his mother's sleeve. "Mommy, why are they taking that lady away? She didn't do anything." The mother pulled the child close and whispered, "Shh, baby, don't look." Simone stood up, slowly. She picked up her bag. She straightened her stained blazer, and she looked at Brenda Caldwell one more time. Not with anger, not with defeat, but with something Brenda would spend the rest of her life trying to forget. Patience. The kind of patience that knows exactly what's coming. But before the officers could take another step, a voice cut through the cabin, clear, sharp, coming from the back of the plane. "Stop! Don't move her!" Teresa Nichols, Senior Flight Attendant. 20 years with Crestline, 5 more than Brenda. She'd been working economy class the entire flight, but she hadn't been blind. She'd been watching from the galley entrance, watching everything. She walked into first class like she owned it, shoulders back, eyes locked on the officers. "Before you remove this passenger, you need to hear something. I have been observing this cabin for the past 45 minutes. This woman has not raised her voice. She has not left her seat. She has not threatened anyone. The only aggression I have witnessed on this aircraft came from our own crew member." She turned to Brenda, and her voice dropped to something cold and quiet. "I saw you push her hand, Brenda. I saw you knock that phone to the floor. Don't you dare stand there and lie about it." Brenda's mouth opened. "You weren't even in this cabin." "I was standing right there." Teresa pointed to the galley entrance, 6 feet away, clear sightline to row 2. "I saw every single thing you did." The officers looked at each other, then at the captain, then at Simone. Captain Whitfield took a breath. He looked at Simone's driver's license, still in the officer's hand. He read the name again, Simone Sterling. Something flickered behind his eyes. He'd seen that name before, recently. He just couldn't place it. "Officers," he said, "give me 2 minutes. I need to check something in the cockpit." He turned and walked back through the cabin. The door closed behind him, and the entire plane waited. Captain James Whitfield sat down in the cockpit and pulled up his tablet. His hands were steady, but his mind was racing. Simone Sterling. He knew that name. He'd seen it somewhere in the last 48 hours. Not in a passenger manifest, not in a complaint file, somewhere else entirely. He opened the Crestline Airways internal crew portal, tapped on company bulletins, scrolled past schedule changes, weather advisories, uniform policy updates. Then he stopped. There it was, second bulletin from the top, dated 2 days ago. Distribution, senior crew and management only. He'd skimmed it Friday afternoon between flights and forgotten about it by dinner. He read it now. Every word. Internal memo, Crestline Airways Confidential, senior crew and management, effective Monday. Simone Sterling has been appointed Chief Executive Officer of Crestline Airways, succeeding Richard Ellison, who is retiring after 12 years of service. Ms. Sterling previously served as Executive Vice President of Operations and has been with Crestline for 20 years, beginning her career as a gate agent at Washington Dulles. During her first week, Ms. Sterling will be conducting unannounced quality and service audits across select domestic routes. All crew members are expected to uphold the highest standards of professionalism, service, and conduct. Please direct any questions to the office of the CEO. Whitfield read it twice. Then he set the tablet down on his lap and stared at the cockpit windshield. 35,000 feet of empty sky stared back. First Officer Daniel Brooks glanced over from the right seat. "Everything okay, Captain?" Whitfield turned to him. His expression was the kind of calm that only comes after panic has already passed through and left the building. "The woman in 2A, the one Brenda called security on, the one she accused of being drunk and disruptive." "Yeah? She's our new CEO." Brooks blinked. "She's what?" "Simone Sterling, appointed Monday, that's today. She's doing an undercover quality audit on this flight, and Brenda Caldwell just slapped her phone out of her hand and called the police to have her removed." Brooks stared at him for 3 full seconds. Then he said the only thing there was to say. "Oh my God." "Yeah." Whitfield stood up. He straightened his uniform, adjusted his cap, took one breath. Long, slow, the kind of breath you take before you walk into something that's going to change everything. "Stay on instruments. I'll handle this." He stepped out of the cockpit and into the cabin. The entire first-class section was frozen. The officers were still in the aisle. Simone was still standing with her bag. Brenda was still in the galley doorway with her arms crossed and her chin up. Whitfield walked past the officers, past Brenda. He stopped directly in front of Simone. The cabin watched. He spoke to the officers first, voice clear, voice steady. "Officers, I appreciate your response, but this situation has been fundamentally misrepresented. There is no security threat on this aircraft. The report that brought you here was false. This passenger has been cooperative, respectful, and compliant since the moment she boarded." The officers looked at each other. One of them lowered his hand from his belt. Whitfield turned to Brenda. "Ms. Caldwell, step into the galley. Do not speak to any passengers. Do not touch the intercom. Stand there and wait." Brenda opened her mouth. Nothing came out. She stepped backward into the galley like the floor was pulling her in. Then Captain Whitfield turned to face the cabin. Every passenger, every pair of eyes. He spoke loud enough for the last row of first class to hear. "Ladies and gentlemen, I owe a sincere apology to one of our passengers, and to all of you for the disruption you've experienced on this flight." He turned back to Simone. He looked her in the eye. And then he did something that nobody on that aircraft expected. He straightened his spine, pulled his shoulders back, lifted his chin, and he saluted. A full, formal salute. The kind pilots reserve for ceremony, for respect, for authority. "Good morning, boss." The cabin didn't breathe. First Officer Daniel Brooks appeared behind him. He'd left the cockpit on autopilot. He stood next to Whitfield, straightened his posture, and saluted. "Good morning, boss." Teresa Nichols stepped forward from the back of the cabin. She saluted. "Good morning, boss." A fourth crew member, a young flight attendant from economy who had heard the commotion, walked into first class, stood at attention, and saluted. "Good morning, boss." 4 crew members. 4 salutes. Standing in the aisle of a commercial aircraft at 35,000 feet, saluting a black woman in a coffee-stained blazer who had just been slapped, humiliated, skipped, accused, and nearly dragged off her own airline. Brenda Caldwell stood in the galley doorway. Her arms had dropped to her sides. Her face was white. Not embarrassed white, ghost white. The kind of white that happens when your brain finally processes that the ground beneath you is gone and there is absolutely nothing left to grab. Simone looked at the crew, at the officers, at the passengers who were now sitting with their mouths open. She set her bag down. She didn't gloat, didn't smirk, didn't raise her voice. "Thank you, Captain, but I didn't board this flight as your CEO. I boarded as a passenger. And every passenger on every Crestline flight deserves to be treated with dignity, regardless of what they look like, where they sit, or what title they carry." She turned toward the galley, toward Brenda. "Ms. Caldwell, you and I will have a longer conversation when we land. But I want you to understand something right now. What happened today isn't about me. It's about every single passenger who has ever been treated the way you treated me, and didn't have a title to fall back on. Every person who got the plastic cup, who got skipped, who got questioned, who got humiliated and had no power to do a damn thing about it." She paused. "Those people are the reason I'm standing here, and those people are the reason things are about to change." The cabin was silent for 2 seconds, then 3. Then someone in row 3 started clapping, slowly. Then the couple in 1C, then Olivia Dawson, then the businessman in 1B, the same man who had looked away when it all started, began clapping too. The applause filled the cabin, real, unscripted, the kind of sound that doesn't come from obligation, but from something cracking open inside people who had been holding their breath for too long. The officers stepped back. One of them extended his hand to Simone. She shook it. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "I'm sorry about all this." Simone nodded. "Don't be sorry. Just remember it." The applause faded. The officers walked off the plane. The seatbelt sign chimed back on. And somewhere over Indiana, at 35,000 feet, Brenda Caldwell's career began to die. She stood in the galley with her back against the beverage cart. Her hands were shaking, not from guilt, not yet, but from the raw animal terror of realizing that the world she had built for herself was collapsing in real time, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Heather Moore appeared in the galley entrance. She'd been in mid-cabin the whole flight. She hadn't seen the slap, hadn't seen the coffee, hadn't seen the boarding pass inspection or the plastic cup or any of it. But she'd heard Brenda's version, and she'd backed it up to the captain without hesitation. Now she looked like she was going to be sick. "Brenda, what did you do?" I didn't know who she was." "That's not what I'm asking. What did you do?" Brenda's eyes darted around the galley, looking for an exit, looking for a story, looking for the version of events that would make this someone else's fault. "She was being difficult, Heather. You know how they get. She was argumentative, and she started recording, and I just reacted. It was instinct." "Instinct? You slapped a passenger, Brenda. You called the cops on her. You told me she was aggressive, and I backed you up. I lied for you, to the captain, to airport police. You didn't lie, you supported your colleague. I wasn't even in the cabin. I didn't see anything. And now the woman you had me lie about is the CEO of the entire airline. Brenda's chin trembled. She pressed her palms flat against the beverage cart to steady herself. I'll explain. I'll tell them it was a misunderstanding. I'll say I was under stress. The early shift, the short turnaround, I haven't been sleeping. A misunderstanding? You sniffed at her. You called her greasy. You hit her phone. You poured coffee on her. Then you called security and said she was drunk. Which part was the misunderstanding? Brenda had no answer, because there wasn't one. 20 minutes later, the plane began its descent into Chicago. The cabin crew prepared for landing in silence. Brenda went through the motions. Tray tables, seat backs, overhead bins, like a ghost walking through its own funeral. She didn't make eye contact with a single passenger. She didn't need to. She could feel every single pair of eyes on her. Simone sat in 2A. She hadn't moved. She'd taken out a notebook, an actual paper notebook, and had spent the last hour writing. Dates, times, descriptions, direct quotes, every detail of every interaction, recorded in neat handwriting while the memory was still razor sharp. The wheels touched the runway at O'Hare at 8:52 a.m. Central Time. The plane taxied to the gate. The seatbelt sign dinged off, and then the door opened. Standing at the jet bridge were three people Brenda Caldwell had never seen before, but Simone Sterling knew by name. The first was Crestline's Vice President of Operations, a tall man in a dark suit who looked like he hadn't smiled since 2019. The second was Nathaniel Grant, the airline's general counsel, carrying a leather briefcase and a legal pad already full of notes. The third was a woman from Human Resources whose job title was Employee Relations, but whose actual function today was to make sure everything that happened next was documented, recorded, and airtight. Simone walked off the plane first. She shook hands with each of them. Brief words were exchanged. Quiet, professional, the kind of conversation that happens in hallways before the doors close and the real meeting begins. Then Nathaniel Grant stepped onto the jet bridge and addressed the crew. Brenda Caldwell, you are suspended immediately, effective this moment, pending a full investigation into your conduct on Flight 312. You will surrender your crew badge and airline credentials before leaving this airport. You are not to contact any passengers or crew members involved in today's incident. A formal hearing will be scheduled within 10 business days. Brenda stood in the jet bridge holding her badge in both hands like it was the last thing keeping her upright. Tears ran down her face, but the tears weren't apology. They were panic. Please, I've been with this airline for 15 years. Please, I can explain. The time for explaining is at your hearing, Ms. Caldwell, not here. He turned to Heather Moore. Ms. Moore, you are placed on administrative leave effective immediately for providing false corroborating testimony to the flight captain and airport police. The same conditions apply. Heather nodded. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She just stared at the floor like she was trying to fall through it. The crew badge was collected. Credentials surrendered. Both women were escorted from the airport by security. Not in handcuffs, not under arrest, but in the kind of quiet, professional removal that feels worse than either of those things. Because handcuffs mean you did something dramatic. Quiet removal means you did something shameful. Back at the gate, Olivia Dawson found Simone. I posted the video. I hope that's okay. Simone looked at her. The truth should always be public. Olivia nodded. It's already at 200,000 views. It wouldn't stay there for long. By the time Simone Sterling's car pulled into Crestline Airways headquarters in downtown Chicago, the video had crossed 2 million views. By lunch, 5 million. By dinner, the whole country was watching. Olivia Dawson's footage was 43 seconds long. It caught Brenda snatching the boarding pass. It caught the plastic cup next to the crystal glass. It caught the coffee spill. And it caught the moment, frame by frame, undeniable, when Brenda Caldwell's hand slapped Simone Sterling's phone to the floor. But the clip that broke the internet wasn't the slap. Captain James Whitfield, standing at attention, full uniform, saluting a black woman in a coffee-stained blazer. "Good morning, boss." That clip went everywhere. Every news site, every platform, every group chat in America by 3 p.m. Eastern. A street artist in Brooklyn painted Simone's face on a brick wall with the caption, "She paid for that seat." The hashtags wrote themselves. Hashtag, "Good morning, boss." Hashtag, "Simone Sterling." Hashtag, "She paid for that seat." They trended for 3 straight days. Then people started digging. Brenda Caldwell's social media was public. It took the internet 90 minutes to find it. Old posts. The kind of content people write when they think no one important is watching. A post from 4 years ago. Had another one today who couldn't figure out the seatbelt. First class. Some people should stick to Greyhound. A comment under a news article about airline diversity hiring. So now we're handing out jobs based on skin color. Cool. Merit is dead. None of these posts mentioned race by name. They didn't have to. The language was fluent in a dialect millions of Americans recognized instantly. The dialect of people who say what they mean without saying what they mean. News anchor Christine Palmer covered the story on the national evening broadcast. She showed the video. She read Brenda's posts on air. Then she asked the question that turned a viral moment into a national conversation. How many Brenda Caldwells are there? On how many flights? How many passengers have been humiliated at 35,000 feet and didn't have a CEO title waiting to save them? Meanwhile, inside Crestline headquarters, Nathaniel Grant was building a case. The findings landed on Simone's desk within a week. Brenda Caldwell had 5 prior incidents involving passengers of color. 5. Only 2 were formally filed. The other 3 were reported verbally to supervisors and never documented. Both formal complaints had been reviewed by the same supervisor, Greg Dunlap, 11 years in Crestline's HR department. Both times, Dunlap marked them unsubstantiated. Both times, no investigation was conducted. Both times, Brenda walked away clean. Heather Moore's written statement confirmed she was never present in first class during the flight. She admitted Brenda texted her mid-flight, "Back me up if anyone asks." She admitted fabricating her account to the captain and to airport police. Onboard audio captured everything. Brenda's remarks during boarding, the skipped service, the words, "You're kind," and the sound, short, sharp, unmistakable, of a phone being slapped out of someone's hand. The FAA opened a formal review. Director Paul Sutton issued a statement. Filing a false security report on a commercial aircraft was a federal matter. Brenda's claim that recording crew was a federal violation was itself a form of intimidation using fabricated legal authority. The DOJ's Civil Rights Division announced it would review the case as part of a broader examination of discriminatory treatment in commercial aviation. Brenda Caldwell was formally charged. Filing a false report, federal misdemeanor. Simple assault, the physical contact with Simone's hand and phone. The hearing took place 6 weeks later in a federal courtroom in Chicago. Christine Palmer was there. Olivia Dawson was there. Half the country watched the live stream. Olivia played the unedited video, all 9 minutes. Teresa Nichols described what she witnessed and Brenda's history of complaints. Heather Moore testified about the text messages and the coaching. Captain Whitfield described the discrepancies, the plastic cup, the calm demeanor of a woman accused of being violent, and the moment he found the memo. Brenda's defense argued stress, long shifts, sleep deprivation, a difficult divorce, no racial intent. The evidence said otherwise. Guilty. Both counts. 18 months probation. 200 hours community service with civil rights organizations. Mandatory racial bias training. Permanent ban from the commercial aviation industry. And a formal written apology to Simone Sterling, read aloud in the courtroom and entered into public record. Brenda read it with shaking hands. She said she was sorry. She said she never meant to hurt anyone. The courtroom was quiet. Not because people believed her, because they'd heard it all before. After the verdict, Simone held a press conference. Not as a victim, as a CEO. Mandatory de-escalation and anti-bias training for every crew member. Not a 1-hour online module, but a 40-hour program developed with civil rights organizations and behavioral psychologists. A new anonymous complaint system across all routes. No more single supervisor dismissals. Every report tracked, investigated, and resolved by an independent review panel. Greg Dunlap, terminated. His entire caseload reopened. And the Sterling Standard, a company-wide protocol ensuring no passenger would be challenged, questioned, or singled out based on appearance. Random service audits, demographic-tracked passenger surveys, an annual equity report, published publicly. Crestline became the first major U.S. airline to publish that report. Within 90 days, 2 competitors announced similar programs. Within 6 months, a congressional subcommittee cited the Sterling Standard in a hearing on passenger rights reform. One slap on a Monday morning flight changed an entire industry. 6 months later, Simone Sterling sat in her corner office on the 14th floor of Crestline Airways headquarters. The Chicago skyline stretched out behind her, steel and glass and winter light. On her desk sat 2 things: a quarterly report showing the highest customer satisfaction scores Crestline had posted in 5 years, and a framed photograph of a 22-year-old girl in a navy blue uniform with a crooked name tag and a smile that could light up a terminal. She kept that photo where she could see it every day, not because she was nostalgic, because she never wanted to forget where she started, or what it felt like to be invisible. The world had moved on the way the world always does. New headlines, new outrage, new cycles of anger and amnesia. But the ripples from Flight 312 were still spreading, quietly, stubbornly, in ways that mattered more than trending hashtags. Simone was profiled in 3 major publications that year. Every interviewer asked the same question: how did it feel to be slapped on your own airline? Every time she gave the same answer: don't make this about me. This is about every passenger who was made to feel less than and didn't have a title to protect them. Their story is my story. I just happen to be the one with a microphone. Brenda Caldwell was completing her probation in a suburb outside of Columbus, Ohio. She'd moved there after the trial, left Chicago, left her apartment, left everything that connected her to the life she'd had before Flight 312. She was working at a department store, folding clothes, restocking shelves, the kind of work she used to look down on. She issued a written public apology 3 days after the sentencing. 4 paragraphs. The words, "deeply sorry," twice. "I take full responsibility," once. The internet read it in 30 seconds and decided it was garbage. No airline would hire her. Her name had become a verb in flight attendant forums. Don't pull a Caldwell. The kind of warning that lives longer than any court record. Heather Moore resigned from Crestline 2 weeks after her administrative leave began. She didn't wait for the hearing. She wrote a personal letter to Simone, handwritten, 3 pages, about growing up in a house where going along to get along was survival. About the moment on the jet bridge when she realized her silence had made her complicit in something ugly. She wrote, "I didn't hold the hand that slapped you, but I held the door open for the person who did." Simone read the letter alone in her office. A week later, she wrote back. 2 sentences. "I accept your apology. Now go be better." Teresa Nichols was promoted to Director of In-Flight Experience. She designed the 40-hour anti-bias curriculum herself. On the first day of the first session, she told a room full of flight attendants, "Your job is not to decide who belongs on this plane. Your job is to make sure every person who steps through that door feels like they do." Olivia Dawson's video never disappeared. She started a social media platform called Witness, dedicated to documenting everyday discrimination caught on camera. Within 6 months, 500,000 followers. Within a year, 3 videos from her platform led to formal investigations. Captain James Whitfield kept flying. Same routes, same uniform, same steady hands. The "Good morning, boss" salute became legendary inside Crestline. New hires heard about it during orientation. Crew members referenced it like scripture. When asked about it in interviews, Whitfield always said the same thing. I didn't salute her because she was my CEO. I saluted her because she deserved better than what we gave her. And sometimes sorry isn't enough. Sometimes you have to stand at attention. And that's where I need you. I told you this story because somewhere out there, right now, today, someone is living their own version of Flight 312. And they don't have a CEO title waiting to save them. They don't have a captain about to salute. They just have the people around them. People like you. So here's my question, and I want you to really sit with this before you answer. Have you ever watched someone get treated unfairly and stayed silent? And if you could go back to that moment, what would you do differently? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story hit you the way it hit me, if you felt that slap, if you held your breath when the officers walked in, if you got chills when the captain saluted, hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Because these stories matter. They start conversations. They change minds. And sometimes, they change entire industries. Stay loud. Stay kind. I'll see you in the next one.
One slap, one folk recording, and a CEO nobody saw coming. You know what gets me? Simon could have ended it the second she was on that plane. One phone call, one name drop, done. But she didn't. She took the plastic cup. She took the cold coffee on her sleeve. She took the slap. Why? Because she wasn't thinking about herself. She was thinking about every black woman who sat in that same seat before her, who got treated the exact same way, and nobody ever found out. And Olivia, she didn't know any of this. She just saw a woman getting treated wrong, and she hit record. That's all it took. Simon's patents built new policies for an entire airline. Olivia's phone made sure the world couldn't ignore it. One person endured, one person witnesses, and an entire industry had to change. So here's the real question, and I want you to be honest. Have you ever seen something wrong happen right in front of you and just stayed quiet? What would you do differently now? Drop it in the comments. Share this with someone who needs it. Like, subscribe, because the truth doesn't need a title. It just needs a witness.